that wolf dogs do not have, right? So has anybody here ever heard of a liger? Yeah? Ligers are true hybrids, mixing of a lion and a tiger, right? And a hybrid is an 1,100-pound, 14-foot animal. It's massive. It's twice the size of a lion or a tiger. A mule, where they mix a donkey and a horse, is also another hybrid, right? Mules can work very, very hard before they die compared to a horse or a donkey. And so hybrids have something called hybrid vigor. And that's what that is. They're bigger and or stronger. Wolf dogs don't have that. Also, hybrids are sterile. So you can't mix two ligers and get more ligers. You have to keep going back to the lion and the tiger, right? Why is that? And that's because the wolf and the dog are practically the same animal, with one massive distinction, and that is that the wolf is a wild animal and the dog is domesticated. And domesticated over a very long period of time. Easily 30 to 40,000 years are the best estimates right now. So that means that they're not wild anymore. They're meant to be in a home with us. But the wolf, being a wild animal, has a very different set of behaviors. Very little bit of dog. And Leia is a low content. She's mostly a dog with a little bit of wolf. And so we also have mid contents, which are somewhere in between. At the end you have wolf and dog. And he is also a weirdo. Hence you can see him up front and Mr. Thunder back there in the bush, not coming up, and Alice somewhere back there somewhere. Oh, she's inside a little igloo over there. Also wolves, all three of them are wolves. So take a look at Mr. Forrest's paws. Pretty big, huh? So, they're not just all very big, they're also shaped differently. So, when a dog puts its paws on the ground, you have something kind of like that. Short, stubby-toed animal. When a wolf does it, it's more like a hand, right? So his paw is actually about the size of my hand. We've tried that before, and that's not easy to find out because they don't like that, but we have. And so they actually have dexterity. They can grab stuff with those paws, including game, hunting. They will literally grab. Right? So very different than a dog. Also, take a look at his ears. Sorry, buddy, that was my fault. Notice how his ears are not pointy. They're curved over. Same thing with that animal. Curved over ears. Pointy ears are actually a dog trait. And so wolves never have pointy ears. They also have ears that are full of fur on the inside, where you can't see any skin. And his ear is about 3/4 of an inch thick. So it's a solid slab of meat. Right? His head is also rather large. I'm sure you can see that. With the skull being really broad and then the tip of the nose being very narrow, with it being very long. So that right there is the wolf-shaped skull. Right? Dogs have all different types of skull shapes. Wolves have that triangular arrow-shaped head without a forehead. Notice how he doesn't really have a big doggy baseball cap forehead. Whereas dogs look all different sorts of ways. And so when you know what you're looking for, wolves and dogs actually don't look anything alike, right? And so it's something that we see here every day, just the massive distinction between them. Also, you'll notice how we have, let's see if we can get Mr. Thunder to come up. So Mr. Thunder is an Arctic wolf. Pretty guy, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, notice how he really doesn't have a forehead, and notice how his head is even longer and very triangular shaped, like I was just talking about. Did you see that? So you'll notice how we have 3 animals in here. Most of our enclosures will only have 2. And that is because even though they are pack animals, we do not build packs in captivity. Building packs in captivity is a guaranteed way to end up with dead and injured animals. And that is because in the wild, a pack is actually not like a military unit, right? The alphas, whoa, get away, everybody get away. Rattlesnake. With a bird in the snow.
Where is it? You hear it?
Yeah. Okay, then move it. Okay.
Nasaan daddy?
Hey, hey, we got a rattlesnake eating a bird in front of a forest pack. I need someone to bring the snake catcher in a bucket. The snake catcher is by my desk.
Oh, the black one. Oh.
No.
Oh my. Oh yeah. I say it. There's a rattlesnake. Yeah.
That's a woodpecker. Good eye. Definitely a woodpecker.
Rattlesnake. Oh my.
You don't have to go home, but you can stay here. Yeah.
So big.
Right.
Roger, don't move.
So we'll get a little bit more of a show once they bring the snake catching stuff. But just to finish off what I was saying, alpha wolves in the wild are actually not like a military leader. They don't take over by beating everybody up, right? Most of the time, they're actually just mom and dad. Does that make sense? Right, so what you have with a wolf pack often is a family structure, with the alphas, quote unquote, actually just being the breeders.
Roger.
So in a wolf pack, you can actually have up to 15 or 16 wolves, and in general, only 2 of those animals will be having babies. Yeah, everybody's too
Big.
Yeah, well, that's all right. That's pretty cool, huh?
I do want to learn. I'm not afraid of
Yeah, I
doing
didn't
it.
think you would.
I mean, right now, it
The bird. Oh.
Yeah.
Look at the mouth, baby.
Has it been explained to you? How to do it?
I mean, I know you want to get as close up to the head, squeeze gently.
You can kind of grab
Something
it
a woodpecker.
if you were just like keep it away from you, of course. But you don't want, you want to be very gentle about it. It's a lot easier with these. We used to do it with shovels and hoes. That was harder. Even than if I hand. Yeah,
Baby.
the smaller squeeze too hard and you can actually break their bones,
Oh,
hurt them. This is a very fragile time for them to. It's very simple with these. You know, we used to do it with shovels and hoses. It's crazy. Right there.
Roger, I finished about the the snake.
It just appeared.
Yeah, it's a wild. Oh, there.
Way from here somewhere. That way? Could be that way. Could be that way. You know where the fork is at, or like that 3-way fork over there at the end of Jubilee Trail?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's the road to the retreat. There's that.
I had my
road
radio down.
going that
Did
way.
Ramon get his help with the snake? Yes, I currently have it, Crystal.
And then there's a
Dad,
road.
do you know where to take it? Ramon is explaining. Copy.
And then there's the third road off on the end, on the farthest left. Take that road up. You'll come across like a road off to your left-hand side at some point. That seems right. You're about a mile away from here, and then just let him go there. Be careful, of course.
One more.
Yeah, that was cool.
Go back. All right.
Yeah, thankfully they're prairie rattlers, so in all likelihood you'd be fine. It would hurt like hell, but you'd be fine. I've heard it feels like getting hit with a baseball bat. Okay, so where was I? Alphas, right? So okay, let's backtrack. The whole alpha thing is something that biologists are currently trying to get rid of. The term alphas do not describe the true behavior of the leader wolves. What they really are mom and dad. Generally, they're mom and dad to multiple generations of children. And so alphas are not constantly fighting the rest of the pack to stay alphas. They're not constantly being threatened by the betas, quote unquote, and the omegas and all that stuff to stay alphas. Because you have mom and dad. You're not going to try to kill mom and dad to take over a pack, right? Of course, you can sometimes have
Reggie,
aunts and
come here.
uncles and other extended family. Nonetheless, you still have a family, and so that's different in captivity, where you're taking animals from different parts of the country and sticking them together in a small enclosure, which is kind of like a prison, and then expecting them to just work it out once they're adults. That means they're going to kill and fight and try to take over the pack. So we don't do that. The exception to that is when animals are raised together since they're puppies. And that's what happened here. There was actually about 12 baby wolves here about 10 years ago. No, that's 12 years now. And these animals all chose each other. That's what you have here. That makes sense, everybody? Alrighty. Oni is kind of hard to see because she blends in really well. Nice here, right there. Everybody see her?
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, if you can, it's a fun game trying to find her. Right? And so Oni is an animal with a lot of attitude, just like a lot of wolf dogs. And so no one pets her, no one touches her, no one interacts with her. She doesn't want it. She's happy to do her thing with her partner named Zeus. Zeus, on the other hand, does like to get pet, but he also likes to then switch gears on you in an instant and try to bite you. Very common wolf dog trait, to bounce back and forth between I'm happy you're petting me to I want to bite you. Why, right, is the question. It's a little baby. Excuse me, come please join. Who's a baby, she's not even 4 months old yet, and she is also, as far as we know, a wolf too. Possible that she's an extremely high content wolf dog, but in all likelihood a wolf. However, to be clear, purity in bloodlines, right, only matters in our minds. Because an animal that is a very high content wolf dog, you know, that is possibly 98% wolf is a wolf. You know, it doesn't matter that it has. She is, for all we can tell. And so, she is currently being raised partly by Mr. Flurry and partly by us. She comes home every night and spends the evening at our house. Right? And she has been for the last about 2 months. And it's a lot of work. I promise you, you would never want to do it. We have a team of people that are supporting us in this process, and that's the only way. She is so different than a dog in some ways that it's ridiculous. You know, if there is something in the house, it is fair game. Right? Paintings on the wall are fair game. Right? Dogs don't even notice paintings on the wall. It's like it's not even there. She's like, oh, I want that. And he's doing something called splashing. All wolves splash, including her. It's the cutest thing. It's fluffy. It's wet, but it's fluffy. So wolf tails are always straight, not very long, and fluffy. Okay. Little girl, come here. Come on. Yeah. You're a good girl. I love you. Okay. Mr. Flurry has gotten so good at the job of being an ambassador that he's literally been on about 14 different magazines, including Rolling Stone. He's been in Rolling Stone. He's been on over 10 different morning shows. He's been to HBO parties with celebrities, and he even got a 10,000 person standing ovation once at the New York Yankee Stadium because he peed on the field. Yeah. Everybody loved it and gave him a standing ovation. To give some perspective on how weird of a wolf he is, though, most wolves would die of a heart attack if they had 10,000 people clapping and staring. Way too much attention, right? Way, way loud, but he's fine. He thrives on it. In fact, he's let that sort of attention go to his head, right? So he knows that he's a special animal, and he definitely lets us know very often that he is. How come you're not eating it? Maybe you're just full. Yeah. Okay. Okay, just be careful where you step. Lightning does it the same place twice sometimes. So, Mr. Quinn, man, how you doing, Bubba? Dude, what's all that about? Yeah. Are you full? Okay, I'll just give you love. Come on. Yeah. So Mr. Quinn is actually brothers with the first girl we saw. So he is also a wolf dog. And he's a very sweet wolf dog. By the time he was about a year old, we had introduced him to close to 1,000 people. So heavy socialization. However, he still cannot be introduced to children. For some reason, children set off something in him that's a combination of the wolf and the dog. And since they're small, it's kind of like the prey instinct, but then also the desire to play. And so while he probably would not seriously try to hurt a child, he would do things to the child that would hurt it, right? If that makes sense. Again, another example of the wolf dog unpredictability. If an adult goes in there, he's fine. The kids are around, no thank you. I've literally had to fight him with every ounce of strength that I have at the end of a leash for 20-30 minutes when I've taken him out to meet families where there was kids, where the adults wanted to meet him, but the kids could not. So that's just how wolf dogs are. Some very narrow, right? So actually I could only fit about maybe 4 fingers in between the 2 front legs, and that is universal amongst wolves, right? You may have not noticed it with the other wolves, but all the wolves we've seen so far have a super narrow chest. Kind of counterintuitive, right? You would think big, strong chest, but no. Wolves are built for speed. So the front legs being very narrow usually coincide on a wolf, not as much in her, but still with how hawked back legs. And so the back legs come on the sides of the front legs like this. And that's what lets them get up to almost 40 miles an hour. Right? So narrow chest. All right, so Mr. Coda, as you can tell, is a very big animal. I'm sure it's one of the first things you notice, right? Funny enough though, that is not a wolf trait. That is a dog trait, right? Wolves do not get this big anymore. There was a time in the golden age of wolves when they had, you know, a ton of territory, a ton of water, a ton of food, that they did get pretty big. His size came from probably a Malamute, right? So Mr. Coda here is a high content, so he's mostly a wolf with a very little bit of dog. Want to see something funny? Take a look at the size of his forehead. Yeah, so the forehead is a dead dog giveaway, right? That big forehead. The eyes also are not almond shaped. They're circular, like a dog, right? But most of everything else about him is very wolf-like. His chest is a little big and his tail is a little long. So that just gives you an idea of how we start to put that stuff together, right? So Mr. Coda is a special combination of very, very sweet and very, very dangerous. So he's so dangerous, in fact, that we only allow the 2 directors of the sanctuary in here. I've been here for 8 years, and you could not pay me enough to go in there with him, right? That's because Coda is something that doesn't happen all the time, but happens sometimes. And that is where you take the opposite sets of behaviors that I was talking about with the wolf and the dog, and with some animals they actually fuse and become a third set of qualities that is only found in the wolf dog. Geographic documentary about 4 or 5 years ago. Nat Geo sent 5 guys here, camera crew of 5 guys, with a famous leader called Casey Anderson, and they came into the enclosures that we had with the full-blooded wolves, and we tried to get them to play with the camera crew, and they all did exactly what we thought they were going to do. I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with this. Scary, right? Danger, danger. So they got up, we left. However, we brought them in with Coda to see what Coda would do. We weren't sure. We can say that Coda took the bait and instantly put on one hell of a show. So the first thing he did was that he ran up to the guy who was leading the camera crew and started biting his arm. Not to draw blood, but he was growling and grabbing very, very rapidly, very quickly, all the way to the armpit, just kind of testing out the arm. Thankfully, the guy stayed calm and just let it happen, because if he hadn't, it might have gone a very different way. Then, after Coda was satisfied with his arm, he notices that there is a fluffy on a camera. So he runs up to the camera guy, jumps up, almost knocks him down as he steals the fluffy and the microphone off the camera. Then he runs off, starts chewing on it, literally tearing this stuff apart piece by piece. And the director is like, okay, I can't let him eat that. So he goes over and tries to trade him a pair of gloves. Coda takes the gloves, chomp, 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 swallows them whole in about 5 seconds, just gone. And then continues to chew on the microphone, decided he's going to keep that too. So up and he sees that there is a second Fluffy on the other camera. So he goes after that. And thankfully that guy was a little bit quicker and avoided it. But that actually really pissed Coda off. So then Coda starts snapping, biting, growling at about 3 different people who are just standing there. And the director is like, okay, this needs to calm down. So he gets in the way and tries to calm him down. Coda decides he really doesn't like that. So he starts to try to bite and growl at the director and literally jumps up all 4 feet, leaving the ground, and goes for his face, snaps full force in his face, where he avoided getting bit by about that much because he moved his head out of the way and just wham. Then he pretty much continues to terrorize the whole camera crew because he wants the Fluffy. And so they all have to literally run out of the enclosure. And all that is on video, and you can see it on YouTube if you look up a video called 130 Pounds of Wolf Dog. Right? And so, that right there. Oh, he's definitely full grown. Okay. He's 13. So, wolf dogs don't have a general size. They can go anything from 50 pounds to 150 pounds. Okay. It just depends. And you wouldn't know it either by looking at the puppy. So, that's also unpredictable too. It's like, what are they going to end up as? Oh, yeah, you want to get that? Funny, we get a guest that wants to baby talk him. I'll let him do it, and he'll just snap and growl at them. He gets really upset. Oh, it's a good man. Yeah. Oh, yes, a good man.
Next.
All right.
We'll see him 9. We'll see him 9. We'll see number 8.
Okay.
The 8th one we'll see is somewhere.
Well, so I forgot to mention this, partly because of but wolves love puppies, right? So wolves are super paternal. They predictably will love puppies, and you can actually just give them a puppy and they will raise them. You know, in fact, when it wasn't really a wolf, it was a wolf dog. Yeah, the wolf dog named Two Socks. I actually met the guy who worked with him. What's the name of her? I don't remember now. The name was Two Socks because he had 2 socks. Right? And yeah, wolf dog. Most of the wolves we see on TV are not actually wolves. They're actually dogs. Sometimes wolf dogs, most of the time dogs. So, this animal right here is an Australian dingo. Right? And surprisingly, the other ones are Australian dingo too. Right? This animal is named Glacier because, you know, it's kind of white. And that white color is a very common dingo color. You know, about 12 to 15% of dingoes have that color. Another 12 to 15% have a black color. Another 12 to 15% have a tricolor of that tan, white, and black. And then the rest of them are tan. So the most common color is that red color back there. All right, this animal is the primary land predator of Australia. It's the biggest apex predator there on land. In the water you have caiman and shark, but you know, on land it's these guys. And they're kind of like the wolf of Australia in the sense of what they do for their environment and how they're treated. So they are both hated and loved and feared and admired and deified and treated like trash. So same thing like the wolf here, right? And it's unfortunate because this animal has a really long history with the Aboriginal people of Australia that's very, very beneficial for both groups. All right, there was a tradition that lasted for thousands of years in Australia where, get this, the women would take in baby dingoes and actually breastfeed them, right, in order to socialize them into the tribe. And I actually have photographs of that in the office that are about 100 years old in black and white of Aboriginals breastfeeding dingoes. So very, very common for their culture. And so once the dingoes were in the tribe, they would help with scavenging and hunting. They would help with finding water because they're apparently amazing at finding water. They got the nickname water diviner. They can find it above and underneath the ground with ease. And that's really good in some environments in Australia. And they were also used as a living blanket. Well, yeah.
Okay, like warmth, okay.
Yeah. I actually also have pictures of Aboriginal women who are naked holding on to dingoes, just on their lower back, on their shoulders, whatever, just to stay warm, right? So, and once the dingo hit about 3 years old and it decided it wanted to start having babies, it was allowed to leave and go be a wild dingo for the rest of its life. So it was only kept for a small part of its life cycle when it was an adolescent, a juvenile. So a very cool tradition that was lost about 100 years ago. These, right, they don't do well with that type of training, that type of complex training. The type of training you're seeing, right, is literally, will you come boop this ball on with your nose so we give you a treat? Like, it's really basic stuff, right? Dingoes can, though. It's really weird because they are wild animals. Funny enough, the same dingoes that can sniff out bombs cannot live inside a house because they can't be housebroken. So still wild, but still willing to work with humans. It's very cool. One more muscular.
Okay.
When your afternoon activity doesn't consist of taking down a kangaroo,
You get a little chubby.
taking everything I said earlier about how the wolf looks and trying to apply that to the dog, do you see the difference? Because these are dogs. They are full-on dogs. Identified, I say quote unquote, at a shelter as 98% wolf. Because they were 98% wolf, they were actually isolated, kept in a small 10 by 10 enclosure. They got no human attention, no walks for 2 years because they were wolf dogs, right? And that's literally, these puppies were there at the fence going, please play with me. And because some person said they were wolves, they were ignored. And that happens a lot, right? All you have to do these days is simply call an animal a wolf dog and you put an X on it for the rest of its life. Even though learning how to identify wolves from physical features alone reliably takes at least about 6 months to a year of consistent training to really get the basics down. And then I'm still learning, and I've created educational courses for that particular purpose. And I'm still learning how to do it 8 years into it. So it's something that takes a long time. But unfortunately, a lot of shelters do that. And a lot of people out in the public will claim they have wolf dogs and not really have wolf dogs, right? So when you see a wolf dog inside of someone's Corvette just hanging out, right, all happy, it's probably not a wolf dog. When you're, at the flea market and the guy, and you have an animal just laying down all easy and he's saying, oh, that's my wolf dog. It's like 98% wolf. Probably not a wolf dog, right? We easily have to turn down 20-something people a month because they send us photos of dogs that they think are wolves and are asking us to rescue them. We're like, sorry, that's a dog. You just have a misbehaved dog, right? So it's important to recognize. A lot of people think these animals are wolves, and that's because the wolves that we've been seeing on TV for the last 50 years have actually been husky, German Shepherd, Malamute mixes like these animals, right? This is not what a wolf looks like. Compare that to Flurry, for example. Very different, right? Very, very different. So that's a big part of why they're still here, is because we have them as an example of what you might think a wolf looks like, but actually doesn't. To put one last cherry on top of that cake, or that pie, I forget which one it is. Wolves do not ever have blue eyes, but you will see blue-eyed wolves all over the place on tattoos and posters and t-shirts. I've literally had 2 people with blue-eyed wolf tattoos here, right? They do not have blue eyes. They have golden amber colored eyes that when they first open them as puppies can be like a dark midnight gray color, but after about 4 to 5 months will turn into an amber golden color. Yeah. All right. So if you guys appreciated the tour, check us out on social media. We are on social media. And share us with your friends. It helps. We rely on people sharing for being able to do what we do. All right. So that was the tour, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Yeah.
It's a apple. What is that? It's a apple. No, it's not apple. Oh, it is. See?
No, they are pears, huh? Those are pears.
It is first.
Partridge and a pear tree.
And that's all for today. Oh, the chicken. Chicken. Lot of chicken.
keep them. I really want one of them for my animals. Who's that wolf? He has the pup.
Okay, where's my people? Alright, I'm gonna mosey up.
Where we were.
Dad, get a soup in there, Daddy.
You guys are welcome to hang here.